I want to touch on using your punches as overhand punches. And what an overhand punch means, if I just concentrate on the cross or the right, or if you're southpaw, it would be the opposite side. So thinking about a cross on its own, for example, a right. Now to get an overhand right in, you're coming over the top. So you're bringing your arm over and down onto the target. Now you don't want to use this all the time because it leaves you open and you look a bit crazy and a bit wild. And if you miss the shot, you know, I've seen that people like fall over and stagger over and lose their balance, and then their opponent has really capitalized on the fact that they're out of balance. So practicing the overhand right there, you need to be keeping your eyes forward and really make sure you only throw the shot when you know that the target is there. And make sure that you want to quickly, once you've landed that overhand right, for example, if they haven't hit the floor, you need to get your hand back to face and be ready to carry on fighting still, and be ready to defend yourself just in case you have missed. The beauty of using an overhand right is if someone sort of like is dropping their hands down, they've got their hands here and they're flicking up and then they're doing all of this. Now, I'm open for an overhand right because it's going to land here, flush down. Right? If I don't see it coming, I'm not going to be able to defend it because I'm not going to be able to get this hand up in time to defend it. So it's a beautiful shot to use against people who are doing this all of the time, or when you're on the inside, they've kind of got the shoulder roll going on, or you know, their hands like maybe down here, that they're constantly not bringing their hand back to their face. An overhand right is a beautiful wild shot that you can just throw over, called a haymaker sometimes, and you land it. You just got to practice it in the gym though, so you're not just eyes down. And I was watching a fight the other day where the person was throwing an overhand right, but the eyes were on the floor rather than on the target. At least if you've got your eye on the target, you're going to be there, you're going to be still watching. So when you throw this overhand right, you've got to make sure your eyes are forward. The power again is coming the same as the cross, it's coming from the hip. Oh, the thing you're doing just before you land on the target, you're bringing your hand over the top of their guard and down onto the target. It's a beautiful shot to use, but again, not all of the time. It's one of those like magical little shots that if you don't see it coming, you want to slip it in because you can see they're dropping it. Don't just keep using it, because if they know it's going to come, they know you're an overhand writer, then they're going to be ready for it. So it's about just popping it in as a piece of your ammo in your toolbox of things to have in boxing, is to be able to throw that overhand shot. Now, I'm going to talk about shoulder on the overhand right, because if you imagine that you're throwing a ball, you've got this looseness here, this shoulder movement here. Your shoulder has to be like this on the overhand right. As soon as you start controlling it with too much stiffness, you're not going to get that whipping power through the target. That whip through is so important for the power, and also very good for that sort of keeping that shoulder nice and loose, so you're not going to injure yourself. It's important to work on rotator cuff exercises before you start doing this particular punch. But this shoulder looseness is where the power comes from, because it allows the energy to flow through, making sure your hand doesn't come down before you throw it, you're throwing it from the face. Eyes are forward, power's coming from the hip, you're punching down onto the target, right? So if someone's face and they're open there, that's good. You can also throw it on the jab hand or the front hand or the left hand. You can come over the top, but you really want to turn your hip down into it as well, bosh. And that's again, if they're dropping their guard all of the time. People are fighting like this, are so open for overhand rights and lefts. So practice them, and it's just a nice, it's not a quintessential boxing move per se, because it's not a clinical sort of Queensberry's rules type of shot, but it definitely has got its place in boxing. You've just got to be clever with it, and you can't let it to be easily read. Don't project it. Yeah, I'm going to hit you. It needs to come from the face, down, through, whip it in, hit down and through on that target. Shoulder looseness is so important. Okay, practice that in the mirror. If you've got the pads and you're holding it, you've got to be careful not get your person to throw too many of these, because it can damage the wrist. But the position of the pad wants to be slightly there, So they get used to throwing down onto the target. Overhand right, you're not going to really get. So you have to just tilt the pad a little bit. So you get used to punching down on it. Practicing on the bag is a nice way to do it as well, where you can just really fire over that hand. But again, make sure you maintain eye contact forward at your opponent, not at the floor and not over there. That is so imperative to do, and making sure the balance, you're not stepping forward and losing that balance. You still need to maintain that stance position, because if you're throwing it, it means you're in range. Ideally, it's beautifully thrown if you've got someone against the ropes, because they have nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So that works well. It can work in the center of the ring, but the side against the ropes is a perfect place to throw it. So practice that again, over and over again, but don't make it a main thing. It's got to be one of those special shots that just pop out of the blue and the opponent doesn't see it coming.